Welcome to another episode of Food, Nutrition, and Wellness with Dr. Dan Remley. Today, we're going to be looking at sustainability, saving water in the home. So stay tuned. Welcome back to another episode of Food, Nutrition, and Wellness with Dr. Dan Remley. Today, we're going to be talking about sustainability, using less water in the home. Dan, it's always a pleasure talking with you.
Glad to be back.
And I know that as we are starting to come off the pandemic, we're looking at various different things that we are used to in the home. And unfortunately, one of those things that we take for granted is our water.
That's right. It is something that we take for granted. There are people that live in some communities in our nation that don't have very good water. I think the examples, we don't have to go very far. We can go across the Ohio River to West Virginia, that people that have wells, they do not have clean water to get from their wells. And so that's becoming a big issue because the water is polluted.
The great aquifers, the underground water that the United States has, it's my understanding we have used 75% of the water.
That's right. And there's aquifers. I just realized, learned yesterday that Massachusetts has an aquifer, and there's some concern about the aquifer there going dry. And the ones I'm aware of are the ones like in the Midwest, like in Oklahoma. You're right. They're really running dangerously low.
Sustainability of saving water in the home. Dan, I only know a few ways that we can save water. One of them is to fix leaky faucets. Another one is making sure that we don't constantly run water. But what do you mean really by sustainability at home, water?
Well, let's talk about sustainability first and what that implies. It is a very complex topic. And, I've talked about sustainability in previous shows. There's trade-offs. Any decision, any action that you make, there's trade-offs. And so you sort of have to be aware of those types of things. And so when it comes to water resources, there's trade-offs in terms of, what you decide to do with your water. And so we'll talk a little bit about that for everything. And then hopefully we'll talk about just some little things you can do in your house every day to help you save water on your electric bill and, help the environment and all those types of things. And sustainability can be a complex topic, but really what sustainability means is avoidance of the depletion of natural resources to maintain ecological balance. And so I like to think of it as trying to lessen my footprint, trying not to use up resources so that my kids, my grandkids can inherit what I inherited growing up in terms of, water resources or, making sure to preserve their quality of life in the future. So it involves social, environmental, and then economic too. And environmental is the easy one, but there's also economic sustainability. And so that gets into preserving the ability to access resources, have jobs in the future. We've all seen boom and bust. You go out west, you see these ghost towns. Those are all because they had the gold rush, for example, right, where towns would boom and bust, right? Because once the gold runs out, then you lose your economic independence, and we see that today as well. We see communities that even out west where they don't have waters, and so they dry up and they're no longer. We have communities here, probably in Ohio, where depending on one industry, once that, for example, natural gas and fracking, once once that's gone and those natural resources are depleted, those towns may dry up too. So
most of us have not ever experienced a shortage of water. When we do experience it, it's either through the TV, like Flint, Michigan. But most of us can go to the water tap and turn it on. And most of us don't necessarily see that there's going to be a future problem.
that's right. And maybe you've lived through a boil water advisory, and that can really be disruptive in your life. But usually those boil water advisories are very much short term. And so, they're not long-term types of situations that we have to deal with. But, imagine living in a world where you have a permanent boil water advisory. That's not a very pleasant thought. And, if you talk to anybody who has a private well and their well is polluted, their lives have become very difficult because they have to go into town and get jugs by bottled water. A lot of people out west, even in Appalachian communities, they're doing this. They're spending a lot more money on their water resources. And it's a real inconvenience too for them when they can't just turn on the tap and get their water. And when you have to rely on going into town, getting jugs of water for cooking, for bathing, for, everything that we use water for, even for flushing the toilet. It's very disruptive. And so we're very, very lucky to live, as you said, very lucky to live in homes, most of us here in Ohio, where we can turn on the faucet and flush the toilet and turn on the shower. And we take that for granted, but it is a privilege. We live in a world right now, and I'm sure maybe you're aware there's a new UN report on climate change. Very, very scary. We're about 2 degrees warmer than we were in pre-industrial times. And so they're expecting the next 20, 30 years, we're going to get to be about 3 degrees warmer. And it doesn't seem like much, but scientists say that very much more likely to experience droughts and heat waves and those very extreme weather conditions, even like hurricanes and extreme weather events. And that's a problem for water because obviously, you look at it out west, what's going on out west right now, they're drying up, they're having forest fires. Down south, you've got the hurricanes blowing in and disrupting water supplies. And so these extreme weather events are going to create water problems for us. And so, who's responsible for these problems? Who's responsible for the climate crisis that we have and water disruptions? Well, we all are, really. And what can we do to change? Well, we can change things that we do every day in our homes to preserve water, to lessen our footprint when it comes to water. But we also should be advocates. We can call our state lawmakers and ask them to advocate for policies that protect water and try to mitigate climate change. We can put pressure on companies. Policy is really important. We need to have good water policy so that we don't have a Flint type of crisis. What we're seeing in many of these communities in West Virginia, these are because of bad policies when it comes to water. And we should be advocates for our communities and to protect our water supply. Policy is kind of like you think about a football game, right? A football game is played on a field that has boundaries, there's rules. And so, we need to make change. And just like football keeps changing its rules to make it a better game. And so we need to keep changing our rules and policies so that we can have higher quality of life and protect the quality of life of our children and our grandchildren. And so we need to think about that. When in Ohio here, we're very fortunate. We have an abundant water supply, so that water can easily be replaced. But, the future is it's unknown. What climate change is going to do to our water supply here in Ohio. As these other states run dry, will we have to share some of that water that we have? the population is growing. And so, we continue, our agriculture becomes more intensive. You wouldn't want to drink any water from the Grand Lake up in Mercer County because it's polluted. It's polluted by agriculture. And any of you've been up to Lake Erie, certain times of the year, you can't swim in Lake Erie. So, we are facing a growing crisis when it comes to water supply. And so, what can we do as consumers? Well, we can lessen our footprint when it comes to water, and little things that we can do. Even if you don't care about the environment, you think, well, none of this is going to affect me. You can save money. There's lots of little things you can do in your home to cut back on your water bill. So that's another argument for trying to save money on reduce your water usage. So one of the biggest contributors to our water usage is the toilet. And there are toilets that are more economical than others in terms, or more water efficient than others. In 1992, there was an environmental act that was passed that actually set water standards for toilets. And so you can see in the 1950s and growing up in the 1980s, we used about 4.5 gallons per flush. We've got that down now. So you got a toilet now. We got it down to about 1.3 gallons per flush. You can actually buy ultra high efficiency toilets that only use 0.8 gallons per flush. So our toilets have become much more efficient. So, if you are looking for another toilet, you can look for these UHE toilets to save money. And that might not seem like a lot, but it really is. It's going to save you a lot of money in terms of your water bill over the year. If you switch to these EPA WaterSense toilets or these UHT, you're going to decrease your water by about 20 to 60%. And that's going to save you about $110 per year and probably about $2,000, $200 over the life of the toilet. So that really does add up when you think about the water usage and the amount that you can save on your water bill. But it's not all of us are in the market for a new toilet. And to be honest, you're better off even if you have a toilet from the 1980s, 1990s that's not really efficient, to go out and buy a new toilet. I mean, you're using up a lot of resources that way too. It takes a lot of water resources, a lot of emissions. It goes into producing a new toilet. So, sometimes if you have an older toilet, there's little things you can do to make the toilet more efficient. So a couple things little tricks you can do, and you can look. There's lots of information online to just different things that you can do to make your toilets more efficient. You can put a little bit of red dye in the tank and see if any of that red dye leaks into the bowl. And if it does, you may have a leak, and you might have to have a plumber come in and fix that new leak, or sometimes you can just replace the toilet flapper. If you replace that toilet flapper, that can help the leak. Or you might have to upgrade the canister valve to save money. There's actually bricks that you can purchase. You can drop the brick into the tank, and that can actually save you water as well. It makes your toilet more efficient. You can save about 2.5 gallons a day. And the average person flushes the toilet about five times per day. Even when it comes to taking a shower, most people take about a 5-minute shower, and that uses up a lot of water. There are just cutting back on the amount of time that you take a shower. And I have teenagers, and so teenagers take very long showers. So I'm trying to get them to, put on their timer, put on their watches, and start the stopwatches. Try to get them to take shorter showers, less than 5 minutes. That's probably the best thing that we can do. There's some little tricks that we can do even with our faucets. There's actually you can replace shower heads or faucets to lower your gallons per minute. There are EPA water sense shower heads and faucets. And you can see that the typical faucets shower head uses about 2.5 gallons. Well, you can buy water sense shower heads. You can reduce your gallons per minute. And same with faucets too. You can buy more efficient faucets where you can reduce your gallons per minute on your faucets as well. You know, if you're not ready to upgrade your shower heads, your faucets, you can actually buy. You can purchase screws, and you can put on the faucets, and those can also reduce the amount of water that you use. So be thinking about those little things. That those little changes can make a big difference. Even things like, you know, when you're brushing your teeth, turn off the water. I mean, those are very simple things, but they all those little small actions do add up over time. I don't know if you knew this, but laundry also takes a lot of water, and our washing machines have become more and more efficient over the years. So, you know, growing up, probably the washing machines that my mom and dad used, they used about 51 gallons per load of laundry. The newer washing machines are more efficient. The front loading tend to be very efficient, although it's very important to maintain them. There's a maintenance issue there as well. Water could become trapped in the door gasket or near the drawer for soap. And if water begins to smell or the clothes begin to smell, then you may need to really give it a good scrub with water and bleach solution. Clothing by itself, even independent of the washing machine, is very water intensive. So when you go out and buy new clothes, you're actually using water because it takes a lot of water to produce those textiles. And for example, cotton depends on pesticides. It takes about 1/3 of a pound of pesticide per shirt. And then if you have polyester, you're wearing polyester, synthetic fibers. You're also using, it takes nitric oxide to produce these products. And that's a greenhouse gas, 300 times as powerful as carbon dioxide. So that contributes a lot to greenhouse gases and global warming and that type of thing. So it's better if you can, like when you're done with your laundry, to give it to Goodwill. Try not to buy new clothes, or go to Goodwill and buy some, upcycle some of those older clothes, or fix the clothes that you have. There's just little things that you can do with your clothing so that you're not going out and buying new clothing all the time. So dishwashing machines also use a lot of water, although dishwashers are actually more efficient than hand washing. Dishwashers have also become more efficient over the years, which is a good thing. But make sure with dishwashers, you load them up as best you can so that, you don't wash them when they're only half full. That's pretty inefficient. And dry scrape your food as best you can. Load them up into the dish. Some things you have to use, you have to wash by hands, like obviously large pots and pans that aren't going to fit in the dishwasher. But dishwashers are actually more efficient than washing dishes by hand. So make use of your dishwasher. If you are in the market for a new dishwasher, look for the Energy Star label. Those are the most efficient types of dishwashers. And also, it's important to maintain your dishwasher. So clean the filters out as much as you can. Make sure the seal around the door of the dishwasher is kept clean. And then you don't really need to use the drying cycle either. You can cut out that. Just air dry your dishes. And that's going to save you energy. Cut down on your energy bill. And a lot of when it comes to the kitchen too, one thing in terms of saving water, we don't think about food as a water, right? But actually, food is water because it takes water to make the food, right? So it takes water to raise cattle, for example, and we consume cattle in the form of steaks and hamburgers and that type of thing. It takes a lot of water to produce milk, right? And so when we waste food, we're basically wasting water. And Americans, about 30% of all the food that's produced is wasted. And one of the biggest contributors to food waste is milk, because people really hone in on those. I know we do too, on those expiration dates when it comes to dairy products. But really, I mean, we can have milk that's dated. We can, if it's past the use by date, maybe 1 month past the use by date, it's probably still good to drink. It's not unsafe to drink. It might not taste good, but those use by, sell by dates do not pertain to food safety. They pertain to quality. And so that's important to consider when you're thinking about the food in your refrigerator. Try not to waste food as much as you can. And it's okay if something is a couple weeks out, from the use by, sell by date, even if it's a milk product. Some people think, well, I'll just donate this milk to the food pantry. Well, the problem with that is somebody else might, if you don't use it, they might not use it either. They'll just throw it out. So you're okay if don't pay attention so much to those use by, sell by dates, when it comes to food safety. You can always freeze food too, and use it later. Buy less food than what you need. A lot of people that buy more than they need, so buying smaller quantities so that you're not going to be wasting food.
In one of our other telecasts, when it came to specialty crops, I did not know that for an acre of land, in growing any kind of vegetables, you need around 24,000 gallons of water every week that you're growing it. And so consequently, I think it follows what you're saying is that if we waste not only milk, but vegetables or things of that nature, we are indirectly using up a water resource.
Yeah, not to mention, exactly. Not to mention the water, but like pesticides that are used on those crops too, and those get into the water supply. They wind up in the rivers drain into the oceans, and it's there's a situation in Mississippi around the Delta that where the sea turns red, it's the red tide, and it's all because of the fertilizers and pesticides and that type of thing. So yeah, you're right. But even vegetables that tend to, you keep them in your refrigerator and they tend to maybe wilt or spoil. I mean, you can use those in soups and things like that. So in fact, I used some spinach I thought I wouldn't eat it fresh, but I put it in the crock pot and I made some tortellini with it yesterday. And so there's different ways you can use your vegetables, like in soups and things like that, and crock pots if you think they're going bad. Very unlikely that they're unsafe to eat. The one exception is baby formula. You really do need to, if your baby is on formula, you do need to pay attention to those dates because they lose nutrients, and your kids need those nutrients. Your babies need those nutrients. So that's the only food that you really need to pay attention to, use by, sell by date. So the average American wastes about $1,300 on food per year. It's about $3.50 per day. And that's actually the number one source of food budgets is spent on wasted food, especially meat and seafood, dairy products. And if you think about that, at $1,300 a year, that's actually more than Americans spend on gasoline, clothing, heating and electricity, and property taxes. So we spend more on food waste than we do gasoline every year. And that kind of blows your mind if you start to think about that. So, I did mention using your freezer, but also having a use first corner of your fridge. So kind of moving the older products up front. If you don't compost, your food scraps, that's a great way to save money as well, because then you can use that compost like in your garden to grow, more food. And buying in bulk is actually better than buying and then you can you cut down on your single-use plastics and that type of thing. Label your leftovers is important. Using leftovers is really important. Not eating out, going out to lunch so much. That's one thing that I'm working on.
You know, I think you bring up some really good points, because water is one of those things we really don't give a lot of thought to. Now, it is interesting at our house, we are on a well water system. And one of the things that we do is every year we test the water. We have had on occasion individuals from the city of Portsmouth, their water control, come out and test it to make sure that, you know, it's a good balance, you know, good water. We also had the ability to get on the city water, but we have chosen to continue with the well water. We have never yet seen it go dry, and I keep my fingers crossed.
Yeah, and another way we can save water is by drinking water. Ironically, you know, I've got a Diet Coke here. I like Diet Coke every now and then, but it takes a lot more water to produce this can of Diet Coke than if I were to drink from the fountain or just have bottled water available. Because it costs money to produce the carbonation in it and the can, and you know, even recycling takes water. It uses water. So,
you know, one of the other things that I've seen is that we sell a lot of bottled water, and the water that we get from our tap is just as good as most of the bottled water.
And it takes
we're wasting a lot of money, time, energy.
You're right. Now, some communities need that bottled water because it's not safe. Their wells aren't safe, or their municipalities. We're seeing that more and more. But yeah, for most of us, we don't need bottled water.
Yes, we're talking with Dr. Dan Remley. He's a food nutrition specialist with the Ohio State University Extension Program, the Food, Nutrition, and Wellness Program. Dan, thank you very much. And I always look forward to your shows.
Thanks, Patrick.